he was way faster. We were crawling down that. I mean, it had to be. It's a garage again meant for trucks. So if you're talking an 18-wheeler, then likelihood that that's an 18-foot wall. But anyway. Or maybe we should at least, say it was as we were getting down, I could see him walking like so fast. He did not run. Again, he's in his 50s or 60s at this point, maybe. But he did not run. He was just walking very fast. And as I was halfway through the wall, I saw him coming even faster. And I just let go, got down, and again went into hiding. Unfortunately for us, the next day was Quran class day. If you went into hiding when there was no Quran class the next day, and he was not around specifically to get you beat up or whipped, then you had a chance of evading his anger until he was not angry anymore. But the next day was Quran class, and I believe I had a system down packed. I mean, I couldn't miss class, and when he came, he being the father, when he came out of his quarters to go into his office, he would always pass through the garden, which meant that he would pass by the Quran class, but sitting there and again sitting. I have to say what Musketeer Musa Fall said is that the ESAS time, which was in that era, was a time where we knew we were going to cry every day. That was certain. We understood that. We all understood that we were going to cry before we went to bed. Anyhow, or anywho, the day which is in question, and I'm not sure how I knew I would live long enough to tell the story as clearly as I'm telling it, but I knew I would have to tell it one day. I mean, how this whoop is used for is the driver of the horse carriage. They use this. Not even the donkey uses this, but the horse, so the horse can run faster. It is again a whoop that is has a wooden handle like like a nimchuk handle, that long of a stick, and beyond that is leather for about well, weaved leather, so it's weaved up, and it's weaved up for a good 5 or maybe a good 6 inches. Uh, well, no, maybe more. Anyway, it's weaved up long enough for the driver to hit the horse. Got to hit the horse in all parts of the horse's body. Over the years, Sitting used this whip on us so much that the leather part fell apart. The leather that was carved in so nicely when we first saw it, brand new, because we were there when he got this whip from the father, that part became shredded to where Sitting began to roll that part around his hand, that leftover leather. He would use that around his hand and actually beat us with the stick, the leftover part, the stick. So it was that day, and I sat there. Sitting could tell I was distracted, but his job was just to keep an eye on all of us and keep order going however he saw fit. And I keep laughing about it, or I keep giggling, and I don't mean to laugh so much about it, but remembering Sitting back then and how he seemed literally like a monster. He would have a smirk on his face, and he would have this whoop in his hand, but it would only be held in his hand by 3 out of 5 fingers in his right hand. The index finger was there to intimidate us by poking it at our head, which would begin the beating. So he would poke his index right hand, and he's got the whoop hanging down from his 3 fingers. His thumb is out, hanging out. So it's like a plane, they're just hitting your forehead. He's hitting your forehead with his index, and as you put your hand up, he has a smirk on his face, but his left hand is covering his smirk. So you can't really tell how hard he's laughing or how bad he's giggling. And then as you put your hands up to protect from the poking of his index finger with the whip, he takes his hand down from his smirk of the face and he grabs one of your arms, and then the whooping begins. So it was this type of monster. I mean, we would see sitting on different occasions. The Magal Tutubas, we went with him, or we met him there. He was always happy to eat. He was happy. He was happy when he was, watching soccer, so football. There were times when sitting was happy, but definitely when it was time for him to give us a beating, we knew we were really going to get it. And this was mine and Musketeer Papacha. And so uh, I tried to calculate how fast I can miss the father. Maybe I can go and hide in a location until the father walked by the office and I can see him pass. Even if he had to give the order, let me make sure I'm not there. That's the worst part, to look in his face and he's giving the order for your whooping. Remember, we already had orders to be at every single salah on time. That's 5 daily salahs. If anybody misses the salah, they will be whooped for it already. And nobody toys around with that. Now, the father, just the day before, has seen yours truly on top of a tall wall. I can call it maybe a 9-foot wall. I think 16 inches is, 9 foot is fine enough. This 9-foot wall, and he's cussed in Wolof. He yelled at me to get down. He was not able to catch me to give me a beating himself. I've managed to evade that, at least for one night. Here I am now trying to evade it again. Unfortunately, that did not take place. I asked to go to the bathroom. I stayed out as long as possible. You can't come back too late, because 2 for 1 would be not too good under those circumstances. I mean, just imagine if I had stayed out too late, then the father had missed, or I'm sorry, if I had stayed out too late and still did not miss the father, that would be a problem. If I stayed out too late and missed the father, then that means that I was to get a double whooping for being out too late. Now sitting really knows why. I tried so hard to stay away so that I could miss the father, and the fact that the father has given an order for me to get whooped. So my chances are I stay put. I just watch the window. Maybe he'll forget all about it. Maybe he got over it overnight. No, that did not happen. It wasn't too long. The father walked in there. Sering. Bo pare dama bëgg nga dóor ñaar ñi. Dimb dama génn gis leen ci kaw mi fële. Bo pare nga dóor ma leen ba ñu bëggate. And sitting with his grin. Makes his noises. And then the father gently walks out and goes. That's quite an encounter. But the poking at the forehead, it reminds me about the headbutt competition championships that were there, that Falak Abdul Fattah Muhammad used to organize every time sitting was not in the classroom. He organized the youngest of the musketeers to headbutt one another until one of them started crying or fell down. For the longest time, it was the youngest Badra who had a head shaped almost like it appeared to be a seed of an African fruit known as konkorong. So he was told that you have the head of a conqueror and you could knock anybody out that you want to. So let's start slow on your peers. So he takes Papa Jam, Dam Sise, he takes on over the and it takes, it really takes about 10 minutes for the match to take place. 10 minutes is what it takes. It's during the time that sitting is out fetching for pencils and pens and notebooks for us to write on. So it didn't take him long to go from the classroom to his living quarters, fetch them because every day he would take them back. But during those 10 minutes or so, whatever he used to accustom himself to do there, do the guy. And Falak Abdul Fattah Muhammad Ismailo, that guy, because I remember Dutz was one of his coaches, one of Badra's coaches, telling him that you do have the strongest head. And the promoter, like the Don King of the situation, was Falak Ismailo. That's the guy. And so what he did was promoted after class so that people would know around the compound that Badra has a strong head. So Badra would get promoted. He would get pat on the back, whatever else. So he had gotten through Dam Sise, Papa Cham, Sitting Mudu, Papa Njai. So at least he had gotten through maybe a week or so worth of headbutts. And so he was made to believe by those who were promoting him that he had a strong enough head to challenge a new generation. So he challenged Musa Fal, and he said after that he would go to Dudugay and then Sheikh. And it was like two sheep or two animals headbutting each other from a distance. But the problem was this one could not take place indoors. It had to take place outdoors. And it was interestingly so exactly the wall where we were caught up. It was at that alley as they were still building it that this match would take place. And apparently, as they took their positions and they started to run towards one another, once they met, Badr fell all the way back at least 3 feet and then began to cry as his promoters walked away. But this also coincides with the fact that it was only a few months later, I would say, that the two that were caught at the wall were the same two that were present when yours truly broke his arm. And of course, once they put the cast on the arm in the hospital, which took place really late at night, we had to go from ICS to Wagunyai, pick up Fanjai, and then go to the hospital. And then when we got back to ICS, the first thing that Vijay did was take me directly to the father. Yes, so these were all memories. Most remember them to be that way as well, who are still with us today. Umukala, Yaitui, these, they're still at ISAS, literally. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Very interesting. But again, Malika Mauna Muhammad remarried to someone who was considered an Ibadur Rahman, who, and they definitely, they don't really sit or get along, especially back then in Senegal. Um, the two uh, tariqas sometimes had conflict. Never mind those who said that no tariq whatsoever, other than the Quran, the Sunnah, that they know it as. Who knows? They know. That's what they say. So anyhow, or anywho, and once this marriage took place, it began to get, with all these other situations, it began to get strange. It began to get somewhat strange, because at this time I'm resurfacing with my English. I want to be closer to my mother. I'm getting bullied. Although at one point she had, again, Anthony come out and take care of Sheikh Mbake, which is completely different thing. Sheikh Mbake is also in the area of Ibrahim. So he was beating up. And I think, I got beaten up, or we got beaten up so well that after a time, after a while, we couldn't even feel like we were getting beat up anymore when we were getting beat up. Um, and that's not necessarily the worst part. The worst part is looking at an older sibling who you know is stronger than you, and they're getting beat up. That's so when I saw my older siblings getting beat up, that, I mean, all of us, we all saw, that to actually take place, and that was not easy at all. But now this is where it uh, tears apart. The father finds us going back and forth to see our mother and wanting to be with our mother, who is at this point married to somebody else, as just a little too weird. Just kind of, and you actually came here, or you on the basis of your children who came here, on the basis of the Mbake family who you were married to, but you're not married to anymore. You're married to somebody who does not even care to whatever. So basically, at some point, Rashid al-Lubnani, I saw him walking from the father's office with my mother and holding our passports. And there were only two of us there, so there were only two passports, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe three. Maybe Phillips was still there. And she explained that he told her that she can take us with her. So this was a transition out of ICS, and we would go to Grand Yoff. We would stay in Grand Yoff. The marriage would last with the current husband. I would say no more than 1 year. I would say no more than 1 year. I think in the interim also I want to mention that he did take my younger brother, who had gotten out of Dantec and gotten over his illness, had a surgery for being kicked by the animal in the grind. He took him to learn Quran in Fas Touré, which is a Quranic, very renowned Quranic school. So in that year that took place, within that year also a divorce would take place. Again, the marriage did not last very long. We would be left high and dry, um, and my mother would venture into finding new companions and allies at the University of Sheikh Anta Diop. So she would be there, and interacting with university students, intellectual minds, until now there was uh, at least one Quran school that we would attend under Ustaz Jub. At some point, we were in Parcel, Rashid and I would go there. But Falak being in Mbake and then later on recalled to Dakar to be with us, she would sometimes take him mainly with her to be with the student, and sometimes we would actually be, or we would be at the Quran school, and he might just be at home chilling, so, or just relaxing. So because he was too old at that time and school was out. Now through the